I have, as I say, I've never, ever in my years there heard any discussion about reserving. Just trying to think, I can't ever remember reserving anything for professional trained planners.
But I like Carol's term. It's partially a traditional understanding who has the training and the expertise to be able to fulfill all the requirements in an adequate kind of way. And that by tradition has come down to rest on people who've had the appropriate kind of training and experience. There's nothing to say somebody might not have had formal training, but over years has had the appropriate expertise to be able to make and participate in that kind of decision making.
You see, because the real decision is not the application. It's the planning authority, ultimately the manager, but it's the planners. So that's the key, is to get the right people into the system which looks at these things that come in. It's not who cares where it comes from, that's the key. It's not who can prepare some particular application, it's who makes the decision about it. That's where the real issue lies.
Yeah, it can be difficult. In reality, I don't think it's even here. It's such a specific issue because I've very seldom I've come across an application that was done by somebody that didn't have quite a fair amount of expertise. I've very seldom had the one with you ago. I think you get about 2 or 3 of them.
With municipality.
A year where you get somebody that really cannot afford those services but want their rights and actually within a plan. Now, I also remember this, that South Africa is more of a pioneering type of society than Ireland is. And so, which one's got to kind of account for. If you look, if you take a place like Western Australia, asking how about doing enforcement there, and they said, I don't know. Well, tell me as soon as I've got the case that I can actually look at, because everybody complies. But it's not as
everybody just complies.
I'm more familiar with law by person because at least I've been there and walked around there. And again, it's a sort of where the culture is, let's comply, let's go through the formal system. There's just no inclination to not do that. So that is very different. We will push a boundary. We've always pushed the boundary. We came here because we weren't happy because boundaries were pushed where we were, so we came here to push the boundaries here. And that culture is still there.
But I think the issue, the assumptions that lie behind both discussions is really one of, I have used the word, the traditional who is employed. And I think that really the fear for many people here is that given the nature of appointments, of the people who make the decisions and do the evaluation, is that increasingly there have been situations where people who don't have the appropriate kind of training when they're young, or even if they're a bit older, haven't had the experience, and those kind of people simply don't know their way through this stuff to do the evaluation. So that's forced a lot of people back to say, hang on a moment, that work better be done by people who are formally trained, and that raises the issue of job reservation in a way. And that's and I think that's the fear. Where you have the tradition that you know that it's going to be dealt with by people who have the appropriate experience, and I use the word both experience and training because they're not synonymous. There can be people who don't necessarily have the formal training but have had the experience, because people who've had the training don't necessarily have the experience to do the job. What we've been having in this country is a number of cases where we know, to take it to an extreme kind of case. I heard of a situation where somebody who had a degree in classical life and dancing, but because they had an uncle in the business, was put into a senior position to make the kind of decisions without any training or experience. And I think that's the kind of thing that's made people very nervous here to want to have a level of job reservation. From a point of view of the many municipalities say they need to have people who can put in a reasonable application, that they don't have to keep sending it back and back and back. That's why perhaps it ought to be put in by somebody who has recognized the skills and training to do that. I think that we're going too far over to deal with a particular kind of problem. But I think there is a real problem in this country of people without either experience or formal training being put in positions to do that assembly, evaluation, and make the recommendation to go on to a particular kind of manager. And I think that's why people are falling back on the need for job reservation.
See, the thing is it's not just academic exercise, because the thing does manifest himself in real life. There are, I can't remember the exact number, I think it's about 32 schools in the Western Cape, but are so wrongly placed that they can't actually use them. But it's ghosting, of course there's nothing else they can do.
Ghost schools.
Pretty much. Well, there's now a bit of a political thing, but there's like four people going to this is massive school. In this particular province, we've got a hospital not far from here, which they actually designed the whole thing, got the thing located, and the department paid for all the buildings and stuff, and then they realized that nobody's ever
the wrong place.
No, well, one wrong place, no water, so I had to kind of pipe that up from 4 kilometers away. And then they also realized that they didn't actually, the other part of the department that's supposed to employ the doctors, the nurses, the cleaning staff, don't even know about the hospital. So you've got a building, but you've got nobody to actually occupy it.
But let me give you a kind of extreme.
Well, in Mkulu, we've got how many hundred people below the flat line? No, they're already there. They've got their houses. Now I realize obviously really well, but below the flat line. You're seeing about the situation was they've invested there. And even if you say, well, let's move and we'll help and pay and we'll get funding, they're kind of settled, and that's the sort of thing that happens. Now, I've realized that a thing like that doesn't really happen in Australia, it doesn't really happen in Norway, I assume it doesn't really happen in Ireland, so therefore you don't really need the same tools.
Let me give you an extreme case of the kind of thing where on both sides of the question we have a lack of expertise and or training. There was a case that came to the Commission from about 4 years ago where somebody put in an application to one of the small authorities for a 70,000 square metre shopping centre. I think the nearest person with a body temperature was 4.5 kilometres away before you had even real people. So it didn't have an immediate catchment area. Now, the issue is that the application had been put in by an architect who didn't know anything about planning, had been put into a small local authority where the planning staff were not necessarily formally trained planners. So it went through that system. No one had any comprehension of what 70,000 square metres was going to do. It is massive.
I know what it means.
Yeah. So it went all the way through the system being approved by everybody that was needed to approve it in this local authority before it came to the Commission. Before it came to the province sent it to the Commission, given the structure at that particular time. Only there did somebody like Mark Vogel say, hang on a moment, this is a bit crazy. And we called everybody in to a meeting. We called the architect in, we called the young planner in, we called the municipal manager in, we called the owner in. Everybody came to the meeting and we said to the guy, do you know what you've asked for? He actually didn't know. We said to everybody, what is it that you actually want to build there? He said, we wanted a petrol service station, a car wash, and a corner cafe. It had all been done in about 3,500 square meters, not 70,000 square meters. But behind that lies the issue. The application had been put in by people who didn't know what they're doing. The evaluation
was by people
who didn't know what they're doing, all the way up the line. Now, it's because of that kind of, and that's admittedly an extreme, but it's because of that what people said, applications ought to only be made by people who know what they're doing. And on the other hand, it was also saying, and the decision better be made by people who know what they're doing.
Or at least the evaluation needs to be, even if the decision is made by somebody else.
You see, that's as I was saying, in Ireland, our security is that every planning authority has a planning section, and it's got people like us in it. So you feel relatively comfortable, and we find repeatedly at the national level, when there's mad stuff that comes through, it's not the planners. We always, 95% of the time on exactly the same wavelength as the local planners. It's the political input that has affected the final
That's why
decision.
one needs to understand, because you see, if you go back to some of the comments that Pat was making earlier, if you're going to have this plethora of municipalities making their own rules of regulation, then the dangers of the 17,000 square meter shopping centre in the middle of nowhere are real possibilities.
Overcapitalization of infrastructure can't maintain all those kind of issues, but you are right in the sense that, I mean, and I'm a legal person, is that I think laws are very last resort type of that they use. And I've always said that I'd rather have a really rubbish law and great planning capacity and extremely competent, qualified people than have a fantastic, beautiful looking legislation and nobody to actually work with it. And that sort of, in Ireland they did make a change in legislation when they realised councils or counties are abusing or whatever it is. The political component is going to fall on making unwise decisions, and they brought it down to the manager. So if it is not isolated cases but consistent abuse in the system, then you might have to resort to make a law to say, okay, so therefore manager, you make a decision. But you are right that you're probably, in a sense, better off without work reservation, but with well-stocked, competent municipalities
who are making the key evaluations and
Yeah.
the recommendations for decisions.
And thereby has the assumption about whether that will or won't happen. You've got to get out to the edge of the world somewhere to see this story. I'll get down the coast somewhere.